Usually, my feet are dangling. I'm so short, but this one, my feet feel like they're too high.
I thought we were doing better with this.
You are, but these chairs look really great. It just depends on how much cushion's in the seat.
All right. Well, here we are, Saints by Number again here. Full disclosure: Bishop Duca was kind enough to come reintroduce himself to us because we had some spiritual warfare, I guess you'd say, with our audio being deleted off of our hard drives. But anyway, to introduce, we have our co-host, Scott Smith here. The Catholic nerd is what I coin him as, or he coins himself as. So we'll reiterate that. But we're just so honored again to have you here for the second time.
It was fun last time, so it's going to be fun this time, I'm sure.
Right.
Just make it a weekly thing.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not. Not that much fun.
Bi-monthly.
Maybe monthly, bi-monthly, maybe,
Yeah, awesome.
Got like a diocese to run or something.
Right. So, thanks for coming. And like we said with the last interview and with Father Todd, like this is a little bit more of a personal interview style with you guys. We're humanizing our priest and bishop and just getting to know you a little better. So I guess we'll go straight into it. Can you tell us a little about your childhood, your story coming up, and your conversion or discernment into the priesthood, and then how one becomes a bishop?
That's your whole show right there.
That's it.
I'll give you a short version of that, and maybe we can flesh out different parts if you want. Born in Dallas, Texas, 1952. I'm Louis and Eileen Duca. I'm the oldest of 4 children. My sisters below me are Roseanne, James, and Irene. All of us are named after one of our maternal or paternal grandparents.
Italian thing.
My blood is pure Italian. Both my parents were directly. Their blood has been unsullied by other races.
Yes.
But I found out that my grandfather, my mother's father, was baptized in Bayagula here in the diocese. Okay. And my dad was born in New Orleans. They moved to New Orleans for a couple of years. He was born while they were there. They moved back to Dallas. And both my mother and my father were raised in Dallas. And so we're old-time native Dallasites.
Where did the grocery business start? Were they all grocers or?
No. Well, my grandfather, my mother's side of the family, she grew up in a family that had a grocery store. It was like a double shotgun house, and so the one side, straight back, one room was the grocery store. Next door was where they lived, and so she grew up in a grocery store, in the grocery business with my grandfather, obviously, the family business. And there was 2. She had a brother, so the 2 of them were raised in Dallas in the grocery business. My dad did not grow up in the grocery business. He had one job working for, actually, again, all these little connections maybe to Louisiana. He worked for a company that made oil refinery equipment for many years. I've talked to someone here that thinks they might have actually done business with that company at one time.
Out of New Orleans?
No, out of Dallas.
Okay.
What was the name of the company?
Fritz Glitz Incorporated. It was a family-owned business, and my dad did the estimating.
Oh, nice.
He's always good with numbers. He started out with a slide rule and then went to the calculator.
The TI-83.
The electric calculators, and eventually to a electronic calculator. But he always carried a slide rule with him.
Oh, nice.
And so anyway, we born and raised in Dallas, went to Catholic schools there, St. Thomas Aquinas Church and school. Went on to Bishop Lynch High School. In the 8th grade, I thought I wanted to be a priest. I remember running to my mother's car one day. I don't know why. I have no idea. Don't remember what the circumstances were. But I remember running to the car saying, I want to go to the seminary. And her face was like somewhere between surprise, shock, 8th grader. And we did have a high school seminary at the time in Dallas, which actually closed that summer.
Oh.
And so I went on to which was a God's blessing as far as I'm concerned, went on to Catholic high school there in Dallas, Bishop Lynch High School, run by Dominicans.
Okay.
Well, it was co-institutional. So the boys' side was run by Dominican priests. The girls' side was run by Dominican sisters.
And your elementary was St. Thomas Aquinas? Was
Yes.
that Dominican run?
No, that was run by the Sisters of Holy Family of Nazareth sisters, not the ones that are here. These were they're out of Chicago, actually, had come down to Dallas, missionaries, and have a Polish background.
Those are the nuns that would guard the eyes.
That's right. Well, that's another story. We'll get to that maybe
Yeah,
later.
yeah.
But and so we, I was born and raised there, went to seminary, and high school. I decided to go into the seminary. So right out of high school, I went to Holy Trinity Seminary, and it was an 8-year seminary located in Dallas, just off the campus of the University of Dallas. And I attended all my classes were at the university. We call it collaborative seminary. So collaborative seminary, we do all the formation. You live at the seminary, you're a seminarian, but all the classes, you just matriculate into the university for your classes. And so it was a great university, still is a great university. University of Dallas, give you a plug for the University of Dallas, but it's a great university, still Catholic university, even though it has one of those names like, I guess the University of San Diego is also, I think it's a Jesuit school maybe, but this one is Catholic all the way through. So anyway, and after that I was ordained a priest and served 30 years in Dallas as a priest. Then one day get a call and to become the Bishop of Shreveport. At the time, I was the rector of a seminary. I served for about 7 years as an associate pastor, and then my life changed completely. Well, it changed from what I thought it would be, and I was made campus minister at SMU and vocation director, similar to the job that Andrew Merrick here in our diocese had.
Okay.
He worked at LSU, but also vocation director.
And how does that work with, you were in Dallas and they sent you to Shreveport?
Well, that happened because what happened later on.
Okay.
So then I served for just a couple years by myself at SMU. Then they sent me to Rome to study canon law for 2 years.
Right.
And then after that I came back, made rector of the seminary, was there for 12 years, too long, but I was there for 12 years. And then I got the call there from the nuncio that the Holy Father had chosen me to be the new bishop of Shreveport. He said Archbishop Samby was an Italian, and I knew that. And I remember in the room where I was talking to someone. I was at the seminary. We were having a day of actually a vocation day put on by the Sarah Club. We invited, over the course of the year, 3 or 4 times a year, we invited ultimately all the 5th graders from the diocese, girls and boys, to come out. And they would go from room to room, kind of shift around, and speak to all kinds of Catholic Christian vocations. Of course, priest, sister, brother, religious, married state, single, all these different ways in which you live out the Christian life, Catholic life. And so they get a taste of it all. So the teachers are all taking care of that. They're watching over their kids. And there's a priest that came with his parish, and he's talking to me in the office. I hear the knock on the door, and I open the door, and she said, Bishop, I think she was calling it Monsignor. Yeah, Monsignor, there's a call on the phone. What? There's this guy, he refuses to hang up. He has an Italian accent, and he's calling from Washington. The guy that was in the room, the priest, he had just graduated from Catholic University in Washington. As a deacon, he would serve Mass for Samby at the Basilica there. He knew exactly who this was.
Right.
And he knew exactly, as I did at that moment, there's no reason for him to be calling me unless I was really in trouble. I didn't think I was in trouble. And my heart really kind of sank.
Did y'all
Were
look
his
at
eyes like this?
He looked at me. He looked at me and he went. And he walked out the door.
Oh, because he had to keep the secret.
He knew exactly, and he kept it until, but he knew exactly what was going on. So, he assumed he knew what was going on.
And how old were you at this point?
Oh, gosh, how old was I? I was 50, 30 years a priest. I was ordained at 25.
Wow.
So, 55, close to 55. Yeah, 55, because I remember it would be 20 years before I could retire at 75. I remember doing the figures, Anyway, I came on the phone. He goes, Monsignor Duca, Holy Father has called you to be the new bishop of Shreveport. Do you accept? Before I can say anything, do you accept? Are you sure? I'm sure. Do you accept? And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this is how it's done? This is how the church goes on? I'm thinking, you always think some extraordinary people are being chosen for these jobs, Thank God, because, the church would fall apart. And I'm thinking, I'm the one? Oh my God, I better have faith in the Holy Spirit because, double up on this. But I have been telling the seminarians all the time, if they're going to be priests, they need to be obedient to their bishop. And this was the big bishop calling,
Right.
And so I said yes, simple as that. And then he said, okay, write a letter to the Holy Father thanking him. Oh, yeah, okay, all right. And I'll call you back later. We'll set the date. So we called back, we set the date, and I was ordained for Shreveport, Louisiana. Was there 20 years. Oh, I'm sorry, 10 years. And then that was 2008. And then 2018, I was in my car. I just did an ordination for the diocese, and I had a formal final vow profession that evening. I pulled into my garage. The garage door went down. The car was dark. The lights hadn't come on yet in the garage, and my phone lit up, and all I could see on the top was Washington, D.C. And I thought, oh no. And it was a call from this time Christophe Pierre. Now, Samby he mispronounced Shreveport Porta.
Right.
That's kind of the Latinizing of the city is what it is. Well, Christophe Pierre had no problem. He being from France. He goes, Monsignor Duca, Bishop Duca, the Holy Father has called you to be the new Bishop of Baton Rouge. He knew exactly how to say it, And I said, oh, no. I said, he heard it in my voice. I go, oh, no. I was hoping to stay here,
Right.
And but I accepted again, of course. And then I'm here now today, 6.5 years, and enjoying it, and now sitting down here with you. It's been amazing. I know you're an artist, and the thing I've been really impressed with down here is running into so many talented artists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really amazed at the quality of art. This picture, I don't know if you can see it on the camera here, but the one that I have here that you did of the Holy Family is just one of many, from you and other artists I've seen.
Right. We have a slew of what I say is the rejuvenation of the church from within.
Very, very much so. So I mean that's a lot of my story very quickly, but
yeah. And so while you're here is our last interview, I said how I've held your painting hostage for a good year, and poor Miss Mary, we've been canceling and scheduling.
That's right, yeah.
So this painting of the Holy Family was done for Catholic Radio for their Christmas card maybe 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
And then you guys had asked to use it for y'all's Christmas card the next year, which was an honor, huge honor, and like a cornerstone. And like the art world is like very peaks and valleys, and that was definitely a huge moment for me for y'all to choose that and push it through the diocese. But the painting itself, it's definitely one of my favorites. And there's a modernization in the painting that my wife pointed out. Not so much the style being modernized, but how the Holy Family is depicted, and Mary is huddling over the Holy Family and kind of protecting. And so I thought that was kind of a neat little depiction of.
Is that visible on the camera? Okay, good. Yeah. I have when I was in Shreveport, that one of the churches had some stained glass windows that were done by a local lady there, and they had one of Joseph and Mary, the Holy Family, kind of in flight, or they were in motion, and I said I'd like to have that painting, that window when you take them out and change. They changed that with some other windows, and they let me have it for a while at my office. And what's interesting about it is that the way it's painted, it looked like there were too many hands in it. It was like it was. If you looked real carefully, you could figure out what was meant to be, but it just had a quirk about it. But in that picture, you have the exact opposite. Joseph is behind, around the Holy Family, but he's looking out ahead. That's what I liked about it. He's looking out ahead. Okay, this is one of those more tender moments in a family. This was like in flight or going towards the census, or maybe the flight to Egypt, and he is looking out ahead to make sure there's no dangers ahead. Right. He didn't have time to look down at this point, and that's what I always liked about that picture. Joseph as the protector of the Holy Family. Right. And so there's so many depictions. This was the one I liked about this is that it depicts one of those kind of quiet moments that, there's the flight to Egypt. There's these moments where they capture the family in some particular mystery. The birth in Bethlehem. You have the flight to Egypt. Jesus in the temple. But what happened in between? This is one of those in-between moments. Right. There's no like the feast of Mary and Joseph just loving on their child, you know.
Right.
So
Very,
this is-
candid and
this is-
raw.
well, not raw at all. Just beautiful, just
Right.
gentle and
And you're right. Like when we take pictures at Women's Hospital,
yeah.
been a few times for both of us. That's more the image you see. Sure, it's the mother cradling kind of the
Well,
father
that's the other
image.
thing. You have Joseph cradling the child,
Yeah.
which is like, that's another thing here that's very kind of unique in this particular scene.
And
Yeah.
for a father, the first time you get to hold your first child, it's a very
Well, the thing is that, given today that the need to express the importance of fathers in the family and being the center of prayer along with the mother, that so there's a lot of things about this picture. I just like the ordinariness of the moment,
Thank you.
kind of a candid shot.
Thank you. Yeah. And you have, I guess, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about, you have like a little collection of nativity.
I'm starting to begin to collect some.
Yeah, because when I guess like before you first knew me, you had wanted to do like a Christmas card collection.
Yeah, and that's still my plan coming up. I've got 2. Now this year they keep trying to push me to do the in a sense, get something done. I'm always a little bit procrastinating, partly because I want to get a perfect picture of something, but I'm going to put it out this year. I'm going to try to put it out for next year to look for. We did it when we get the first one we got. We just asked, "What do you have in your repertoire?" And people sent us what they saw and had, and so I got one of those. That was with Fauché. No,
That's my brother-in-law.
Your brother-in-law, yeah. And so anyway, that's been a hope that get 3 or 4 of these that are local artists and make a collection. That could be actually parishes could auction them off or sell
You're
them.
part of the Bishop Duca collection now.
Oh.
Well, no. But we'll see. Well, that's one of my plans in the future. So, and so that's one of my hopes. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's
It's a side hustle, they say.
yeah. I gotta have other things.
Right.
Speaking of other things, last time before we started rolling, we talked about a little bit of pasta. And are you a pasta connoisseur? Being Italian, tell us a little bit about your
What?
your.
You were telling us about the
You keep
pasta
asking these
museum.
questions that are like a whole show in themselves. You ask an Italian about food.
Hey, that's the
You
rest.
ask an Italian about food. He said, "Give me,
Let's go,
give it to me
yeah.
in 5 minutes. Give it to me in 5 minutes." Wait, 5 minutes? I'm just talking about the silverware.
Right.
I mean, when I was in Italy, because I studied there twice, I was always amazed in Italy. The silverware there is huge silverware. Okay, wherever you go, to a restaurant, just big, the normal size. Not usually you have the bigger spoon. Well, the smaller spoon starts out big. Okay, I don't know what it is. They just like big silverware. But pasta. Well, I grew up with it. Of course, obviously, my family, we always eat dry pasta. My mother really never made pasta. We always bought the dry pasta, and every Sunday one of us get to choose what kind of pasta. Okay, you got your rigatoni, you got your shells, you got the ditalini, you got the little shells, the big shells. You got the penne, you got rigatoni, and the penne rigate. You got all the different kinds. And my dad would have boxes of it outside. We went pick it. Okay, shells today. So someone got to choose their favorite, and so every Sunday was pasta meatballs, Sicilian style, big heavy red sauce. My mom was cooking. Saturday, I'd wake up in the morning on Sunday, and I could smell her browning the meatballs. That after she would brown them, then she'd put them into the sauce, and so I woke up to that smell so many times, and So and one time, it was Mother's Day. My dad announced that this Sunday, so Mom doesn't have to cook. We're gonna have steaks, And my little brother started crying.
Right. As you should.
What? No pasta? No pasta? And so we had steaks, but Mom had to cook some pasta for my brother. And so that's always been a part. When I was in Italy, I'd wander around, and maybe to this point too. One time I was wandering around, and I came upon this little bitty. I looked at it. It was literally the National Pasta Museum of Italy. Because you're in Rome. Rome's a government town. It's
Right,
a
I was
center
about
of
to say, it's
government.
gotta be Rome,
So a lot
yeah.
of these kind of museums are nationally are there, and so I went through and watched where pasta came from originally, and where it was made in Italy traditionally. It was always made in places where they had good dry ocean breezes, so they could dry the pasta well, and But at the very end, they said, if you have pasta and beans and a little oil, you have everything in that combination to live.
It's probably a complete protein.
You know, so it's a way to save the world. I said, pasta fagioli will save the world from hunger. Pasta fagioli. You know, so, but in one of those walks, I also came across the National Museum of Presepi. And presepio is what they call a manger scene. Presepio, I think, means a scene.
Right.
Presepio, I think, it means a scene. And you go in, there was these little windows. You look in these little windows, and they had a whole manger scene set up inside, kind of like a natural history museum kind of thing. And some were very folk art, some were very refined, some ceramics, some wood, but all these different styles from all over Italy. It was really wonderful to go in and see. And I always talk about this because in Italy, manger scenes are like model railroading. So I mean, basically a full manger scene in Italy is a whole Italian village set up. And that's why, if any of you who are watching have that, like a Fontanini set, you know, you have the shepherds, you have the magi, you have the lambs, the animals, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, you know, all those pieces, angels. But then you have like a carpenter, and then you have like a lady, you know, herding goats or ducks, you know. Yeah. And what the heck do they have? That's not in the Bible, you know. That's because those go into the city, the country town scene. And then over in the corner, so you have this scene. Sometimes they get very big, and they'll have running water coming through. The little houses are built up very realistically. They'll have lights in them. You know, sometimes they have little animatronic things moving. Over in the corner is the manger scene of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph there. Jesus in the crib, and the animals. And there's usually a broken, like a column, like a Roman column, but broken, which is kind of symbolic that Christ crumbles the earthly powers, you know. And sometimes they'll have an angel. Sometimes they have an angel fountain, which they'll hang angels down at different levels all over the kind of cascading down to the manger scene. And so churches have those same setups, and it's really more important than the Christmas tree for sure.
Right.
I wonder how much of that was brought to us when St. Francis made the first.
That St. Francis is the one that started it, you know. Yeah. So it came right out of Italy, and he set one up in a cave one time, and that was kind of one of the greatest evangelical, you know, kind of decisions, you might say, of sort of teaching some part of the story of Jesus. Yeah. Because my mother would put it up first thing during Advent, and we would play with it and play with all the characters. We knew the story. And I also tell people at Christmas, we read the night before Christmas, you know, but in your Catholic home, you really should take time, maybe in the morning, before you open gifts even, sit around the Christmas tree and just read from Luke the story. This is how the birth of Jesus came about. It's just said right there. It's like, you know, it's like at the Passover, you know, the young child gets up and says, why is this night different from all other nights? And they basically tell the story of and that's it, to get the meaning of Christmas. And that's why I always like that Charlie Brown Christmas. This is very unique for today. Yeah. If you watch it on TV, it's going to seem almost radical, because at the very end of that Charlie Brown Christmas, Linus tells the story right out of the Scriptures. Yeah. He reads the scriptural story. You know, you don't see it very much anymore, but that was every year. Without streaming, that would always show up at Christmas time, and we'd always catch it on TV, you know. So the manger is a very powerful image and a great one that can be understood at every level. We blessed the babies this past week. We're trying to get the custom going of blessing the bambini. So everybody brings their little baby Jesus up.
Is that an Italian custom?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay.
In fact, my aunt at her house, she was my mother's sister. She had a fireplace they didn't use, so she would set it up with hay and everything, and and she had a big bambino. It was a big one, you know, and it was like life size almost. And she would set that with lights around it. That was the focal point for her, the bambino. And so that was that's always been a powerful image for us. Yeah. So that's why I'm drawn to nativity scenes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I like how you compared it to the model train, because that sounds like exactly what
Oh yeah.
it is. Yeah.
If you get into, if you go online and look, you'll see. There was, when I was there, I went to the Piazza Navona,
Yeah.
and they have a big Christmas fair there.
That's I first had gnocchi, me and my wife, at
Okay.
Piazza Navona.
That's the first place I saw candied coal.
Candied coal?
It looked just like a block of coal, but it was made out of candy.
Oh, okay.
So if you wanted to kind of tease your kids, give a piece of. But that's the other. They had this set. The sets. The makers are Landy's, the name of the company that makes them. They're just basically acrylic or some kind of plastic, but they're really well done. But you can get them from this size all the way up to, like, this size. And I bought my family, my brothers, my nieces and nephews, a little set that fits into a little box, about that size. All the little figures, you can bring it out and have a little manger scene. And I enjoyed that being in it. But then they have these little sets. When I used to be in Army, play with Army guys when I was little, they had these little things that were all put in one piece. It was like soldiers sitting around a fire or something, or soldiers behind a bunker. They're all together. They make those for the main. They could get the whole shepherd scene in one piece, and you set it down. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit last time about you did a little pottery.
When I was a campus minister at SMU, it was kind of a nice job, but it had some downtimes. I didn't have a lot of nighttime meetings, and so I was able to sign up for a night course they offer to the people off campus, adults and non-students, and I took one on pottery. Yoshi was the teacher. She was a very accomplished potter, and Gilda was her assistant, and so I learned how to throw pots, and we could use the laboratory there, the wheels, anytime we wanted. Well, Saturday morning was always free. The students, they weren't in there on Saturday morning, so I had it all to myself. And to do pottery, you need 3 hours or so to do something well. It's kind of time. There's steps you got to take. If you rush it, it doesn't work. You got to really be calm about it. And so I got to where I could make some things with lids, and I learned the secret to know if someone's a good potter. Almost anyone can make one good pot. Okay, to make 2 pots the same size, and that's now you got someone that knows what they're doing. And so
is that why the pots are always 3 different sizes?
Sometimes, sometimes, yeah, you can make a set. You can make a set like that if you do it, but intentionally usually not. And but pottery teaches you one great lesson, because when you do pottery, when you put the clay on the wheel just turning, you can smooth the outside and make it look like it's centered, but the inside can be all out of. It can all be all misshapen. You've got to get all the clay kind of moving in the same direction. So you've got to really work hard. You got to press into it and pull it up really hard, pull it up high, and then push it down hard, up and down, until that clay
You're like
is centered to the very middle. It's all centered, okay? So that when you begin to take that clay up, the outside edge will look very smooth, but as you get the bottom part, if it's out of balance inside, there's more clay on this side or that side. So as you move it up, the thing begins to wobble. And I tell people that's why you get a lot of ashtrays in pottery, because you start it, the bottom looks really good. Oh, it's looking good. But as it gets higher, it begins to wobble, and pretty soon, if the wobble is really hard, it just collapses. So what you just take a wire, you cut off the top, and you got a little mini bowl. It becomes an ashtray.
Cereal,
okay,
yeah.
Cereal bowl. But if you center it all the way to the center, really, literally, you just touch it, and it just begins to open up without almost any effort. It just is so smooth. And now there are ways you don't ever get it perfect. There's ways you can accommodate, but if it's basically centered, then everything centered from the center out. Okay, and so it's such a great message. First of all, when Jesus says, you are the clay and I am the potter, that means to get us centered, he has to really work hard sometimes. It's almost aggressive. You have to push it and push. Sometimes the trials of life really kind of beat us up a lot. But in some ways, they're also causing us to let go of superficial things that imbalance our lives, or things that attract us that are superficial, that keep our life out of balance with the Lord. But when we give in to the Lord, we allow Him to use His hands to shape us, then He can really mold us into anything.
And there's no height that we can't aspire
That's right.
to.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so it was a great lesson spiritually when I was, I put all that together, and but I enjoyed it. It was a great experience.
Did you say that you were a Monsignor?
Yeah, for about 3 years before I became a bishop.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Some reason our bishop decided to make some Monsignors, and I was one of them. And so I don't know why. First year, I hardly ever went by Monsignor, and I got the black cassock with the red piping. I'm not sure I got the full red cassock. I just got the red piping, and
Okay.
so I became a bishop. At least I had the black cassock with the red
you had
piping.
the clothes for it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they made you the bishop.
Maybe, yeah, I had the
Looks
cassock.
really
I had one of the cassocks already, so might as well. Yeah, for that I decided just to fly up to Chicago to a place called House of Hanson, which does liturgical and clerical apparel, and I went up there and they took all my measurements, and I said, okay, one of those, 2 of those, 3 of those, and one of those.
Did you get like a starter kit? Like
I knew what I needed, and I just went through it, checking it out. And the thing is that I think the bill came to, at that time, it'd be more now, was $3,000 or $4,000 easy for several big cassocks, and I had that big red cape I wore for graduations. A lot of stuff. I'm really not that kind of. I really don't get into that much. But when it's appropriate, I wear it, and.
Fulton Sheen always had those flourishes with his
yeah,
cape,
he knew how to work it. Yeah, he knew how to
Yeah.
work it. It is kind of flashy, it's kind of nice. But luckily, what happened when the people in Dallas knew that I was becoming a bishop, a Knights of Columbus group would call and say, "What can we do for the bishop?" I said, "Well, how about one cassock for Okay, we'll give. Or how about a half a cassock for $200? Okay, we'll do that.
It's a 2-council cassock.
And so I got it. Eventually, just was gifted to me in the end. It was kind of nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love all those practical things you never really think about, when somebody becomes a bishop. And yeah, thanks for sharing.
Superhero
those.
cape, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, like I was in seminary for a time, and I was like, Matrix had just come out. Like the cassocks, y'all just the best styling, of any vocation. It's the priests and bishops.
Yeah, I just I don't get into it. I don't maybe because growing up in Dallas was not a very Catholic town. In fact, we were very much the minority there. So you just it wasn't very clerical in the sense that you walked around touting the fact that you were a priest. Most priests would wear the cassocks were known as house dress. You just wear it around the parish. When you went out, they'd be dressed in a suit. And of course, I was a child of the '60s, so as the council began to change, and the young priests, would go out more casually. But you would never see a priest in a cassock in a public place. It just wasn't done in Dallas, at least.
Well, and speaking of Dallas, maybe now it would be a good time for you to tell that Jack Ruby story.
This is kind of a weird thing because we have done it before, and now it's like that Woody Allen movie where Woody Allen tries to recreate, a scene he had with another person to entice this girl to like him or something. I can't remember. Play it again, Sam. I can't remember the name of the movie.
It wasn't Annie Hall.
Maybe Annie Hall. I think it was Annie Hall.
Okay,
I think it might have been Annie Hall. I'm not sure, but I just know that it becomes a complete disaster because he tries to make it like it was.
No, you're not
before.
talking to us. You're talking to the.
So, but I think we were talking
or
before.
Groundhog
Well,
Day.
this is really kind of it really is kind of important because in Dallas there were not many Catholics there, and there was still some prejudice and you might be looked at as a papist. I mean, it really was still pretty raw there when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s.
Was it mostly Baptist? What was the
Baptist?
predominant?
First Baptist Church was known as the Buckle of the Bible Belt. They had very big preachers there. I think even Billy Graham was said to be a member of that church. That was his membership, And so and the Methodists were very powerful and big in
SMU,
Texas.
yeah.
Well, the SMU, Georgetown University. I always keep forgetting the name of the college in Shreveport. Is a Methodist college. Not Covington. It'll come to me in a minute. But so they were big. They had a lot of oil money, I think, Methodists did. So they were very influential, and so the Catholics were kind of, they were also some of the Italians, and Italians were not. It wasn't cool. So when my dad grew up in his neighborhood in Dallas, there was blacks, Jews, and Italians. Now they were kind of segregated by streets, but they were all kind of pushed into the same neighborhood. In fact, you go to some places. It's true in Shreveport too, where you'll go to, now it's mostly African American neighborhood, and you'll find a little Jewish cemetery and a little Catholic cemetery there. And so, but every year at Christ the King, we would have the Christ the King procession, which was downtown Dallas. And believe me, the schools would cart all the kids from the school to build up a nice big procession. And we would process a good ways down one street, make a right, and come up another one to go to Memorial Auditorium.
Would you pass like the grassy knoll? Was it like that?
No, we wouldn't go that far down.
Okay, all right.
Because actually Memorial Auditorium was on the other end of town.
Oh, okay.
But we'd start kind of at the cathedral, walk down. It was about, I'm going to guess it was like about 45-minute walk, put a long one. And we'd be praying the rosary. Of course,
that's like 3 good rosaries.
Well, yeah, we're pretty kind of slow, I guess. But I wasn't paying much attention at that age. At my age, I was kind of more just kind of doing it. And, I like to tell you it was a great spiritual experience. It was kind of like a fun day out. The only thing I didn't look forward to is when we got to Memorial Auditorium, I always thought like the bishop just preached so long, just so long. I can never tell you what he said. He was like a little spot down there. We were way up high, And but we did it every year. It was something we did. We stopped it in the 60s, just about the time that everybody else started, doing protests and doing marches and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We stopped doing it. And but the thing you're telling your story about is that, to let you know that, I'm a kind of ordinary guy when I was growing up. I'm still kind of ordinary too. But as we were walking around the thing, we all knew, as we got older, like 7th grade, we knew we'd walk this now for 3 or 4 years, in 3rd grade, we'd be walking the walk. We knew that at some point we were going to come close to the Carousel Club. And the Carousel Club was run by Jack Ruby. Now, he's infamous now as the man who shot Oswald. But
this
it
was like early 60s, right?
Yeah. Okay. This was, I started high school in 66, so this would have been 63, 64, 65.
Kennedy was shot in 63.
Yeah. This is about the same time, right before that. So this is, so I'm kind of young, but we're walking this, and it existed after he died too, because he died as well soon after that.
Oh yeah, he was. Jack Ruby shot Oswald.
Yeah. And so anyway, we're walking. We know this is coming up, and Carousel Club was a strip club. Now that meant something very different back then, but it was nevertheless. And we knew they had posters out front. Okay. Now none of them would have been total, but they were very, for our age, very provocative.
Yeah.
Not that we ever saw them, but we knew they were there. Because we're walking, our eyes are straight forward, and we know we're talking to, it's coming up on the right, we're talking about, and then the nuns, of course, are no dummies, okay? So just as we're getting close, 1 or 2 or 3 of them would come and stand kind of right in front of with their backs to the Carousel Club looking at us. And we knew they were looking at our eyes. They were looking at our eyes, okay? And we're straining to see what kind of peripheral vision we can get, just to get a glimpse, of something, And Hail Mary, full of grace. And so then we passed by and it was over. You see? Yeah, I saw something.
Everybody would make great
No one saw
tales
anything. I saw something. Oh, yeah, I saw something. But then we went back to our rosary, and of course we very meditatively prayed the rosary. But but what was interesting about that is that it would have been a very visible sign of Catholicism, and I'm sure that's why they did it. I wasn't aware of any of that at the moment.
Sure.
But so they would. Of course, those were the days when, it was freer to kind of get around as a kid. We'd have fair day. Texas State Fair is a great fair. I used to go there I still try to go every year if I can. But we go to school in the morning, and this would start around 5th, 6th grade, maybe 7th grade. Sure, 7th grade, maybe 6th grade. And you go, I think we went to school so you could count that day, and then we would get a free ticket to the fair. And they put all the kids on the bus, drive us down to the fair, and just let us out. Okay? There was no teacher going with us. Just, okay, go enjoy the fair.
Oh,
and my parents would.
There was no chaperone at
all?
No.
No, we just go. my dad would say, I'll pick you up. I'll drive in front of the fair. You be there at 5 o'clock. After I get up from work, I'm going to drive over and pick you up, you know. And so we spent the whole day wandering around the fair, and those were the days when you had all kinds of, you know, shysters, and it wasn't a tame fair. It was a wild fair, you might say.
Carnival barkers.
That's where you learned all your lessons in life. That's where you learn how they cheat you in those games.
Was there
you know?
like the mermaid woman also?
Oh yeah, all those things. You get in there and you think that's just a plastic thing on her. That's not a mermaid lady. You know, get out of here, kid. Come on, move on. I got your money. Get on, move on. You know, move along. So. But growing up in Dallas, the good thing about that is that my whole life was Catholic. Everything with Scouts was Catholic, sports was Catholic. Were aware that there were Protestants around too much. I knew they were, you know. In our neighborhood, we knew where the Catholics lived, and so did everybody else. But we carpooled, but also everybody kind of knew who the Catholics were. We had 4 kids. That was a big family in our neighborhood. But it gave the Catholic community a very tight-knit. In addition to families being more tight-knit there, and then, of course, the Italian community being tight-knit, we had a Catholic community that was very tight-knit. And so there was a great sense of identity. And as I said, when I was in Shreveport was like the Dallas I grew up in, right? Even now today.
Okay.
It's not quite as, people aren't quite as offensive or dismissive of Catholics. You know, they're more accepting now. But you're not Catholic by accident when you're in Shreveport.
Yeah, very Protestant.
You know? You got to really stand for your faith and not get pulled in. And that's kind of the way it was in Dallas, you know. And I prefer that. I prefer it. Kind of coming down to Baton Rouge was a very different feeling. There's more of a Catholic ethos in the city. Now in Shreveport, for not being any Catholics, the Catholics were outsourced in many high leadership positions, mainly because I think of Catholic education. A lot of lawyers, doctors.
Yeah.
There's also a medical school there that attracted a lot of Catholic doctors into their hospital, the big medical center there. So they attracted a lot of Catholic doctors. And, of course, we had Barksdale Air Force Base there, and a lot of the military came from other parts of the country.
And there's St. Vincent's, was a Jesuit school, I think, for
there's St. That St. Vincent's was the girls' school, and the boys' school was started out as St. John, then it was Jesuit, now it's Loyola.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, that's one of the good things about growing up in Dallas, that you had a very strong sense of your identity, and very much nurtured in my home. I mean, we were surrounded with crosses in every room, you know, manger scenes. We always did the Advent wreath, and my dad would always lead the prayers of the Advent wreath.
And I think you said recently he would sing, right? He would sing the prayers, right?
Sometimes. But mainly it was that just seeing him be the prayer. Yeah. He would sometimes go to 6:30 Mass, and during the summer sometimes when I was a seminarian, I would go to 6:30 Mass, and he'd come with me. I was a seminarian; I was supposed to be going to Mass, you know, daily, and so he was. We had a really interesting thing at our Mass. The priest would come out, and the first thing he would do was start the Our Father, and he'd start a communion service. So 6:30 Mass, he'd come out at 6:30, and he'd Our Father, he'd go straight to the tabernacle. Some men would come up and receive communion right away. He'd go back. The Lamb of God takes away the sins of the world. Give communion. Then he'd start Mass.
Oh, it'd be a communion service, then Mass.
Because these people had to leave early. They were not going to be able to stay till communion time. So he kind of accommodated them that way. And then we continued on with the Mass. And I served when I was a young kid, all the way up to high school. Even after that, of course, I was a seminarian, so I continued to serve. And so just that whole ethos of having, and that's the key nowadays. I mean, if the faith's going to be handed on, it's got to be handed on in the family.
Yeah.
And the church can be a support to that. It can never replace that.
Right.
And I began to realize how deep it was when every Easter my mother would make a lamb cake and have a coconut lamb cake. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did one with Chef Fols on a little.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he went and bought himself a mold and made a lamb cake too. Did it perfectly, actually, to what my mom did. I gave him a picture. And
my
I
wife
thought,
made one.
And I'm thinking lamb cake, like chickens and bunnies, and how nice to have at Easter, you know. Then I go to the seminary. The first year of the seminary, we have like a little. They gave us a little 1-hour house class on just basic catechism to make sure we knew the basic catechism. And the priest started talking about Jesus, the Lamb of God, and I go, oh, now I get it.
That's why there's all that red frosting dripping from the.
But the thing is that it was that ubiquitous. I mean, everything had something. We had little holy. We would come and go about holy water fonts. So we were really passionate about holy water fonts in our room. So we'd have one stuck on the wall. Bless myself. Eventually, kind of get over that one. I was onto something else. And little dust would fall, and then everyone would clean that out and get some holy water. There was a thing at the back of the church we'd fill up, bring it home, fill it up. But that was just all around us all the time, and so of course during Lent we had my mother on Good Friday, from 12 to 3, you did nothing. Okay, we weren't able to go to the services. We would go to stations in the afternoon usually. And but when 12 to 3, no radio. I couldn't go out and play. Just sit in my room.
There's that homily we read with the morning office on, I guess it's Easter Saturday, about a great silence.
Oh yeah,
has descended on the earth.
Well, it was great silence in our house. But Saturday morning is kind of the end of Lent for us growing up. All of our Lenten practices stopped at noon on Saturday.
So
that was practical because it allowed my mom to start getting Easter baskets ready and bringing out some candy, and it was just she wasn't going to bring out candy and not let us. It was going to be too much, so it just worked, and it makes sense to me actually. So
yeah, when you get to 4 kids, and you have to start or 6, it's a whole process to get all those baskets ready.
That's right. We wanted to dye the eggs, and you can't do that during Lent. So we had to do it Saturday morning. So we do the eggs and all that kind of thing. So, but like I said, it was always the faith was always part of it. Yeah,
it's like the Catholic culture growing up, and even now, I try to tell people like everything that we do is from the Catholic Church. As far as holidays, as far as all the things that have been secularized. I mean, even as far as education system, hospitals, everything. There's like, and it's fun telling Haley, my wife, who's the recent convert, it's like everything we do is attached to some sort of Catholic backing.
Right.
And, Mardi Gras.
A lot of people are upset because Catholics have so much influence in Catholic in healthcare in the United States, and that's because it was these here. These nuns came from France and from the other part of the world, and just started doing it. Just literally just started doing it. In a house or a building, whatever they had, and built these systems up over the years through sacrifice and mission, and so that's no one else was doing it, and so that's always the great hope I have is that we are a church of mission, There's all kind of challenges in the world. They're only going to get harder as the world becomes more secular. And one of those is Catholic hospitals, which run not just on donations, but on federal money that goes through Medicare and those kind of things. And so the government has a say in a sense. And if they were to one day say, you can't have any care, any Medicare or monies coming from the government unless you do abortions or unless you... Well, eventually what will have to happen is they'll simply stop being Catholic hospitals. And what will happen is, I know what will happen, somewhere another Catholic system will arise under the radar,
We'll fill the
because
breach.
most of these hospitals did not start by caring for the people who were wealthy. They were caring for the immigrant, for the poor, the neglected. Knights of Columbus started as a way of making sure that you have insurance for those like women's, widows, and orphans, that they would have ways in which to prepare. A husband could protect his family. And now they built it up into one of the premier insurance companies. Now they're easy. I mean, they don't do liability like property, but they do. They're top notch. Investment
now you
program.
Not that we're doing product placement or anything, though. I love my knights. I'm a Grand Knight.
Yeah, not a sponsor. Not a sponsor.
Not yet.
Well, I guess I am a sponsor. They're anything Catholic,
but now they do. Investing.
Yeah.
Like you can invest in mutual funds, that sort of thing with them. Yeah. And you can feel safe about your investments.
That's right.
Yeah. I went to I think I've told you I went to Texas A&M, and one of the girls.
Shirt.
That's good. My brother would love you. My brother was a graduate, and his 2 sons.
Well, and I mean, it's such a great place for
Yeah.
Catholic culture. But I remember one of my girlfriends was Church of Christ. You know, her whole family was from Abilene. I mean, they
Oh, yeah.
were very Church of Christ, and she didn't even tell. She never told her grandmother that she was dating a Catholic. You know, that was straight out. That was not acceptable. But yeah,
We had a guy in the seminary. He was from Texas, and I think he was in the maybe Austin Diocese, but he was a convert, but his mother was not, and she was kind of embarrassed about the fact. So we went home. It was a small town. He had to go to church in another town close by. You know, eventually she came around, and it was, but for a while that was very traumatic for her to have her son be a Catholic and now be a Catholic priest. Oh my gosh,
Oh.
you know.
we. I was always being asked about the Blessed Mother. You know, I don't think in college I was able to give very good answers. I talk about Revelation 12. You know, she's got a crown, 12 stars. What do you want? But a bunch of my friends went to evangelical seminary coming out of college, and there's now a book about it, Evangelical Exodus. Like half the seminary converted to Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
All these guys that had been, questioning me, it was not because of me that they converted, but it's awesome to see.
Well, you plant the seed. You plant a seed,
Yeah.
and you're one part of God's work.
I wish I had been better steeped in my faith at the time. Maybe they could have converted the whole seminary at that point.
Yeah, so I know we'll have a lot of on the fence people, friends, brothers and sisters in Christ that I have that'll be watching this, and I feel like our Protestant friends, like this may be like one of the only times in the year that, and I say this lightly, that they recognize Mary, or maybe put her on a pedestal. And so as we leave Christmas, what advice do you give maybe me to speak to my Protestant friends, or what can you show the viewers of how we revere Mother Mary?
Well, first of all, nothing in the church, any Christian church, makes sense unless you start with Jesus.
Right.
Okay? We always try to tell people the doctrine of the church, and the doctrine of the Catholic Church is crazy in the eyes of the world. You know, what does he say? Paul says that, in speaking about for the Jews, it's a stumbling block, and for the Greeks, it's a foolishness.
Yeah.
And so until you become really believe in Jesus as the Son of God and begin to see things through that eyes of faith, nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense in terms of the Catholic faith. Any Christian faith in general. Why would you want to give up this or that in the world? You know, well, come to know Jesus, and you'll see that those who have eyes see, ears, and then once that's in place, then I think Mary comes naturally. Okay, and they would say, well, the Protestants, well, it's not they don't. They honor Mary as the Mother of God. I mean, they can't help it, you know. But we can't. Everybody knows that your mother is important. It would have been important to the apostles. It was important to the Scripture writers. We know the story. The only way we know the story of Jesus' birth because Mary said it, and the only way we know about what Joseph did, because remember, Joseph doesn't speak in the Bible, and all his stuff was interior, dreams and stuff. And I know that the only way you can come to that conclusion, how did that story get out, is that Mary and Joseph shared this journey together, and we're talking about it. They had an intimate life of conversation built around their role in this great mystery of salvation. And so Mary could have told those stories because Joseph told her, and it would have been something they were sharing together. We don't think about the kind of, they think, well, they were very much like, fulfilling a task, but they were creating a family. And so how deep you go into Mary's place is something that's much more theological and has to do with making the step to being a Catholic, and seeing things in that deeper sense. And so then the mystery becomes even greater because you realize that God prepared the way in Mary's Immaculate Conception. You think, well, how come she's special? She's special because she was to be given the invitation to receive the Savior into the world. God doesn't force himself on us, and he wanted to be received. He said, she had to? He says, no. God never took away her freedom. But she could see things so clearly that she was able to want to do the good thing. We're all messed up because of original sin. Mm-hmm. We look at a bad thing and we say, that may be a good thing, you know? and we want it, you know? So why do you want that terrible thing over there, you know? But we still get moved in that direction. And Mary was able to, her yes is even more perfect because of that reason. Mm-hmm. And when she received, and she becomes the model for all of us to what we are called to do in terms of our conversion, to say yes to the Lord. Let it be done to me, Lord, according to your word. Not my will, but your will be done. And so she becomes the first Christian, you might say, you know. And so she's the model for the church, the mother of the church. In her, the church was born. And so we're called to do no less than her. Let the Christ become flesh within us, in a sense, through our actions, through our showing, being Christ for others. And all that just flows from, of course, Jesus, you know, and as the heart of all this. And so to come to the belief of the doctrines of Mary, okay, that's something you have to come to as an act of faith. It's a faith. It's a gift. Doesn't make sense sometimes in the ways of the world, logically in the sense. Right. And so, but once you make that turn, then a whole another dimension of the church comes alive for you.
I know it might be weird as we're approaching Christmas, start thinking in terms of Lent, but you know, when people see this, it might be more towards Lent. And I think what you were saying about the beatitude, Mary's grace and her yes, to desire and to crave the good things and to naturally abhor the bad things, that's something we can bring into Lent as well. Yeah. You know, that when we fast, when we give alms, like to actually desire the fasting, and we do Exodus 90, right? And we take cold showers.
I don't do that. I'll tell you, I can't get over the shower. I'm sorry, I can't do that. But I admit openly that I cannot do that. Okay.
But I love meditating on the idea of cold showers during Lent. You know that your body is telling you this is a very bad thing. You know, like what are you doing to me?
That's right.
But you know, when we seek pleasure, which is terrible, right, with our bodies, the body says it's a very good thing. You know, what if our intellect was able to rule over our bodies like Mary's would have? Yeah. You know, so just makes her even more beautiful.
Yeah, but you don't set it up that way too much because it also makes it impossible to be like Mary, okay? The fact is, it's always going to be a little bit hard, okay? That's what virtue is. Virtue is a good habit. You know, when you learn, you do it enough times, you figure it out. You know, I've gone down that path 20 times and I've hit my head every time. I think maybe this time I'll try this way. Yeah. And more to try this way, this is much better. This is much better. And you develop a habit of doing good, you know. Mm-hmm. But anyone knows who tries to quit smoking, or my dad smoked for many years of his life. Finally, they got too expensive. Yeah. It wasn't like some moral thing or about his health. They were just too, his limited budget, 50 cents a pack of cigarettes, that would have been like $1 a pack. That would have been like unthinkable for him. So he slowly weaned himself off of it. But he always told me, he said, Mike, you know, at the end of a big meal, because what he would do at the end of a meal, this is something that's a lost art. He would take a napkin and he'd push it in, like make a little cone out of it, and that would be his ashtray. Set it down. He'd light up a cigarette at the table. This was a normal thing to do. Okay, and he'd smoke it. You know, he said, if I could have one cigarette at the end of a meal, a big meal, and know that I would never smoke another cigarette except maybe to the next big meal, I'd smoke that cigarette. But I know that if I have that one cigarette, I'll be right back into it. Mm-hmm. And so he never did it again. And he lived to be 92, even after smoking Lucky Strike straights for probably 30 years of his life.
So you may be our bishop for a very long time.
We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
My grandpa, Anthony Zumo, super Italian. It was funny. I was talking to my cousin here last week about I wear these undershirts, the wife pleasers, I call them. And my papa Zumo used to always have like a big old dent from a cigarette pack in his wife pleasers. Uh-huh. And then he'd have his scapula or whatever and his religious medals. And then on the right side, he had his inhaler. And
Oh,
he
man.
was
Yeah.
smoking a cigarette, but he was always shaking the inhaler. And they had just brought that up, and I
Yeah.
thought that was so funny. But he was like, to go back to what you were talking about, of just like the roots of your family being extremely Catholic. My Zumo side and my mom's side were just extremely Catholic, and everything we did was revolved around, in the summers we were staying with my grandma Helen, and she'd have her girls over almost every day, and they do group rosary, and we had
Yeah.
priests in and out of the house doing mass and just witnessing these things. I'm like, man, we've got to bring these things back.
Well, this is kind of an interesting thing about changing your life and moving to a life of virtue. No one today the young kids didn't grow up in a smoking culture. I did. I grew up in a definite. I was flying airplanes when the back 20 seats of the plane was the smoking section.
Yeah, it's
Inside
crazy
the
to
same,
think about.
that was the smoking section. Like that wasn't going to affect anybody else.
Yeah.
And kids these days, terrible phrase, but they can't even think about seeing people, greeting people at the gate. Even that's crazy to think
But I'm thinking
about.
about in terms of cigarettes. They were ubiquitous. Even when you look at you go to the 7th floor exhibit about Kennedy's, the museum about Kennedy's
book depository.
Yeah, but the book depository in Dallas, you see everyone's floating around with the cigarettes in their mouth, everywhere. And but now, once we kind of changed, it was not easy to change, and people got angry when they changed. But now, we can't think of it being any other different than the way it is now.
Yeah.
And that's the way sin is in our life. We get to the point where we go through the difficult part of changing and leave something behind that we thought we just had to have, but was really hurting us. It was enslaving us, and we knew that too. Once we pushed it aside and lived outside of that world for a while, now we look back and we go, how did I ever live that way? That's the grace of God in our life that we want to work for. And that's what Jesus brings us in through his birth and death, resurrection, is that hope that we can overcome sin.
Yeah.
I love those first, couple days after a good confession. Virtue's a little easier.
Yeah.
The cravings, the compulsions, whatever,
Yeah.
just a little bit easier to distract from.
Yeah. I was thinking about last time we talked. I didn't bring this up, but me and Haley's story. We've done our first episode, and we talked a little bit about our crazy out of wedlock baby Lola, and just how I thought life was over, and through that sin, kind of reflecting and paralleling that to, not that this is any relation to Joseph and Mary, but accepting that baby, accepting Lola and that yes to life. When, I'm pro-life at this point, and, when you're in that situation, that it can change really quick. And so, anyway, long story short, me and Haley are together now, but I get choked up about it because when we were at Fran U and you were doing the Bishop Circle Mass, we come in late, whatever, with a 1-month-old and Lola, and so we walk in and you're like just consecrating the host or about to, and you're like waving us in to come in as we cruise in late with the stroller and the diaper bags, and just your nature and your humility, and not that moment, but then after Mass, we have like a little ceremony afterwards with donuts and stuff, and next thing I know, you and Lola have this like little beautiful relationship of whatever it is, and Lola's got you on all fours, drawing your name Duca on paper, and I'm just like, it like hit me like a ton of bricks that my daughter, who was fighting to get out of the womb, has now the bishop of the Diocese of Baton Rouge on all fours drawing. And so it's just, I think that's one of those moments and those graces from God that he just makes you chuckle, of just like, he has got you. And, I dealt with so much shame, and
see, the thing is, until you make that choice, for example, to have the baby, for example, you don't know that's like stepping out into darkness. You have no idea what's next. You can't imagine it. But then when you held a child, it's like you think, how could I not have wanted this?
Yeah.
How could I not have wanted this? And that's the power of trusting the Lord.
right.
We have to walk through. We don't know what's good because we've never experienced it that good. And you have to trust and believe you're worthy of that kind of thing. A lot of people don't feel they're worthy of it.
Right.
and they don't move forward. One girl told me, I stopped going to church, Father. And I said, why? Well, she told me it was 6 months ago. I said, it was a big sin. She kind of confessed it, and I said, well, why didn't you try? I said, I tried to come back. I'd come and sit in the church, and then I could imagine that Jesus was just, get out of here. You don't deserve to be here. You're a sinner. Get out of here. Or I'd come to church, and I'd feel God loved me, and I felt I'm not worthy of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the trap of sin.
Right.
And
You
that's
feel unlovable.
yeah, that's part of it. So, but when you break through that, then you're like a new creation.
Right.
And you can't ever go back. You think, you look back at your life, you can't imagine that you thought that way, but you never knew any different, And that's the power of grace in our life.
Right.
Because sometimes we can't think of a way. No one can think of a way to get us out of something. God breaks in, and who knows how much that child was God's work and your work together. I don't know how to even talk about those kind of things.
Yeah.
But the thing is that God turns things. If we follow His will, He can change our lives in a way that we think we're going down a path of sin, and it turns out that with His grace, it turns out to be an opportunity for grace and God's love. And if we turn away and start down the right path,
Right.
and so. I've heard people say that you can tell me as fathers, that when they first held their child, they had an experience of love that they had never had before.
Yeah, it's like an ontological change.
Yeah, it's like something, and see, you don't have that unless you take the risk. Unfortunately, a lot of people are not taking that risk anymore. That's unfortunate, but
Yeah, and just the trajectory of change in my life, whether addiction or small monotonous things that were non-conquerable, now are just like second nature, conquered, mountains moved, and just, I guess like I was actually speaking just today with the pastor underneath us here at Purpose Church, and I forgot what brought it up, but he was talking about someone who came to him and was like, I'm so sorry if you don't want to be my friend anymore. I got my girlfriend pregnant. And he was like, I guess you don't know me. And so basically we were talking about the difference in shame versus guilt. And guilt is a good thing, but shame is of the devil.
That's right.
So guilt is like the beginning of a redemptive nature and forgiveness. And so I thought that was nice. Nice way to put it.
Yeah.
Probably goes back a little bit to the role of the potter too, if he can. But it sounds like Jesus can make even an unbalanced
Right.
unbalanced bit of clay straight again.
God, I think God doesn't take the wire and cut you down. He does what He says. Okay, let's start over again. Yeah. And he pushes it all down, and eventually you figure it out. You get pushed down enough time. Eventually, okay, I'll do it. Let's go. Let's get this started right. And so,
Awesome.
We patron saint, our confirmation saint.
Yeah. So I guess that was Nicole who brought that up, asking.
My confirmation saint is Saint Joseph.
Saint Joseph, and so is mine.
That's a good Italian
thing. Which makes so much
sense. I think I told you last time the story of my grandmother. That's a really good story.
Yeah.
I've heard it many times here in town, but I went to visit her. She was living in a little garage apartment at my aunt's house, and went by to visit her, see her. I was home from the seminary, I think, and she had a St. Joseph chest. She always had a St. Joseph and a Mary and a Sacred Heart. My mother had the same thing in her bedroom as well. And her room was kind of a bedroom, and it's an open concept. It was just one big room, but that's all she needed at the moment. She was happy, and she spent most of her time at my aunt's house. But I looked up, and the St. Joseph statue was facing the wall. I said, Grandma, let me fix your statue. Don't touch that. Grandma, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Because I've been praying to St. Joseph, and he hasn't given me what I want, and he's going to stay there until I get what I want. So the other thing I've told people this, and they've always loved it when I told them, and she would sometimes kind of wax about life, Like one day she was talking, and she says, I don't think I've ever been hungry. We've been poor, we've had difficulties, but we always had food. We always had food. But one day she said, oh, yes, I remember my mother telling me that Mary is the moon and Jesus is the sun. And that really says it all. The light of Christ illumines Mary and brings her to life, in a sense. She brings Christ to life, but really the other thing is happening too. He's bringing her to life. And everything. Oh, it all makes sense to me. That's a very simple thing. Jesus is the sun and Mary's the moon. And I'll see Gino at the restaurant. I'll go over there. He goes, I still remember you. Would you told me that? Jesus is the sun and Mary is the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, it's hard for Protestants maybe to think about Mary being saved before she was born, but God created her. Her Son created her before she was,
well, in
born.
a sense,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, was she saved before she was, because she didn't lose her freedom. She could have sinned, but she didn't.
Yeah.
Because she had clarity. But it was, and I think that she still benefited from the saving grace of Jesus Christ. She received a portion of it before, but I think it was completed. Now, I may not be right on my theology here, but but I think God did, because otherwise she wouldn't have the freedom to choose to say yes. And so she still had the freedom. That's something God doesn't take away. It's just that she had kind of pure freedom.
Yeah, because it wasn't exactly the same situation as Eve, for example. It was a different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd have to look back in my books before.
Well, in a sense, Eve didn't have effects of original sin either. You can't have them before they happen.
Right.
But that's always the great typology, is that Mary's the new Eve and Jesus the new Adam. Where Adam and Eve were unfaithful, Mary and Jesus were faithful.
The knot of Eve's disobedience was untied by Mary's obedience.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I guess to close, or to get near closing, wanted to get your take on the importance of sacred art in our near future, and the importance of having it in your home, the importance of patroning it, and what that looks like.
Well, I think anytime we can put our money to things that are original in this world today, the better. Whether it be a local restaurant in a sense, or whether it be buying art that's been created and by someone locally, rather than mass produced. It's always a gift. Now they're always going to be a little bit more expensive, because you're supporting a person's lifestyle as well. But fewer things that are well made are better than many things that are not, and but sacred art has to attract you, and and so I think there's always a value of the artist, especially on the big scale in terms of the kind of art that comes in churches, but also in having art that's been created by people locally or handcrafted in some way, whether it be a man that carves crosses, or whether it be someone that does beautiful art, paintings, or even does pottery, can be a way of supporting the more human elements of mankind expressing beauty in the world. And so we get so used to finding things that look nice, There, and the ways of creating kind of quite beautiful things that are less expensive is pretty obvious when you go to Rome, or you go to these big religious stores. You can find things that are very inexpensive, and there's a place for those, I guess. But you should always try to have at least one or two pieces of original, I think. I try to do that. I've tried to do that over the years when I go places to look for. Like when I go to New Mexico, I always pick up a little handmade pot, and it has to be signed, one that's not been mass produced by one of the Indian cultures there, one of the Pueblos. And I have a whole bunch of little sets of those. And last time I was there, I found this artist that made this little. He did tin. He worked in tin, and he made this little set that went into a box, and you open them up. These little flat characters that you stand them up, and they had some enameling on them, some painting. It was the whole manger scene. I thought, this is really unique. This is really something,
Absolutely.
And I found another one that an artist, a tin martyr, had these two candle holders, and those now are on my altar. So I mean, those are the kind of things that are very simple, and those were not overly expensive things, but they're a representation of something that was created by someone's hands, and that make them more meaningful to me, and they're more beautiful, and they're unique. And so I think it's more humanizing to look for one or two beautiful things that really attract you. Now, in a busy life like this, you have to go looking for some of these things. You can't find them if you don't go out.
Yeah, they don't sell it at Target and Walmart.
Right, you got to go to different shops, and of course, in New Mexico, they're surrounded by original artists out there. All kinds of things. I buy the little pots because I can't afford the big ones. But there's something unique about having this little collection now. For all the years I've gone up there, all these little individual pots, and they're not cheap either, but they're affordable for me. And when you're a single person, you can splurge a little bit,
Right.
And so
you don't have little hands; they're gonna break them.
but since I've been here, I have this beautiful piece. I have another one that I got, another manger scene that I've gotten, and I picked up a few other pieces that on these auctions. Sometimes some people give the art to the auction, and I've gotten some good pieces that way. And so I have a nice little collection of original pieces of art that I cherish, and even have one from Mr. What's his name?
Norman?
No. The guy that does folk art, crochet.
Oh.
You know crochet? Have you seen him?
Mm-hmm.
He does on planks of cypress, and he does kind of little bas reliefs. He kind of brings out carves it a little bit, paints them. He used to have a booth at the market on Saturday. They're there next week. Yeah, but he wasn't there.
Yeah.
But I have several of his pieces. In fact, someone commissioned a lady prompt sucker for me. And it's very folk art, but and so those are the kind of things I look for. That's in my price range. It's my, but it's I really appreciate them.
Awesome.
Yeah, as Americans, right, we always want to have more, but we don't end up with much. That difference between much and more.
Yeah.
Right. Well, great. Do you want to close with anything? You want us to know anything as a
No, that's
group? Yeah.
And your blessing.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if you could
Okay.
bless us.
The Lord be with you.
And with your
Your spirit.
spirit.
Heavenly Father, send your Holy Spirit into our hearts. Fill us with the hope of the season. Fill us with the hope of knowing that your power into your death and resurrection is more powerful than any problem that we can have. That you will come into our hearts to give us hope. And with that hope, we might not only renew ourselves, but renew the world. And may we continue to honor and respect and look for those men and women who put that faith into religious art. That it might be another reminder that hangs at our home or on our bodies that might remind us of our commitment to Christ and Christ's love for us. We ask God's blessings upon all of us gathered here, the Father, and all listening, Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you.
Yes.